By focusing so heavily on the unserved, the FCC is missing another critical challenge in this country, namely bringing a second or third pipe to the home where these homes are only currently served by a single broadband provider. According to an FCC report on the internet access that was done recently, 55% of the American population lives in a census tract that is served by only one wireline provider, capable of satisfying the FCC's 4 megabit standard. That is to say, only half of all U.S. households have no choice about what wireline broadband provider they have. That's the first point. The FCC is really missing the forest for the trees by not focusing on this lack of competition issue. Second, although cable deployed their super-fast broadband networks, namely those networks that deliver speeds much faster than 4 megabits, so cable has gone to roughly 100 million homes. Verizon and other large wireline providers seem to have lost much interest in expanding their fixed broadband beyond the 55 million homes that they already served. AT&T is an exception, and we'll hear from their Vice President, Jim Ciccone, and General Counsel. Jim, I'm sure, will point out that AT&T has recently announced a plan to deploy fixed broadband to 75% of the homes in their 22 states, raising the homes that they pass from 24 million to 57 million. We believe that public policy should be focused primarily on removing the remaining regulatory barriers that prevent or that discourage other wireline providers from essentially doing what AT&T is doing, which is expand service and provide competition in these areas that are only served by one provider. In particular, we think that the FCC should focus on getting rid of barriers to wireless providers who have not been given their due. As of December 2011, surveys indicate that 34% of all households have already cut the cord and gone completely wireless for their communications. 17%, according to the new survey, do most of their internet browsing by their cell phone. Hal will shortly outline some concrete recommendations for getting more fast broadband availability to the rest of the population. But I want to conclude with just a comment back on those subsidies that I mentioned briefly. We do not recommend that the subsidy program be eliminated, even though we are already almost at universal access, according to the FCC's definition. But what we do suggest is that the subsidy system be rejiggered in several ways. Number one, the current subsidy system doesn't go to cable providers because their customers don't pay in. That should be changed. Number two, the subsidy is now geographically based, which is understandable politically because obviously politicians want to reach rural areas, but we think from an economic point of view, the subsidy ought to be targeted based on income rather than geography. And number three, the subsidy does not go for the build-out of wireless broadband, which in rural areas would be a lot cheaper than installing fixed systems.